Hey guys, what is up and welcome back to the channel. So today's video is going to be on the topic of a recent drop from a gun tuber that I had saw, and that is Trench Grenade and his opinion on the LPVO versus the venerable ACOG. Now I kind of want to go to premise this with the fact that I do own an ACOG. I do love this optic for what it is. It does incredibly well. And I actually keep this because of this durability, and to his point, on a upper that I will usually throw on a lower receiver, and then if it's something I don't have light to be able to roll around and throw with me, it's something easy to pick up. If I got something out here that I need to engage just messing with cattle, I can do so, but that's about the extent that I'm going to run with these, because as good as these have been in the past, there are some very serious limitations, and newer modern optics are going to overshadow the ACOG in just about every way. Now I say just about every way because, to his point, he does bring up two solid areas where the ACOG does excel, and that is one, its weight. These are incredibly light compared to an LPVO. You're looking at probably double the weight for an LPVO, and then as well as the overall durability of this optic platform. Nobody can deny how tough that these are and how much of a beating that they can withstand and still remain zeroed. I've never had a problem personally with an ACOG losing zero. Now, that being said, I am incredibly hard on all of my stuff. I do not baby any of my guns. If you guys have been a viewer of the channel for any amount of time, you will have seen how much abuse that my stuff goes through, and my optics are no exception. So that being said, in my experience, and particularly just with the 1:8 Trijicon Credo, the LPVO is going to be plenty durable. I recently had an incident where the rack that holds my rifles on the ATV here had broke loose, and going about 25 miles an hour down a turn, this thing fall off and landed on a gravel road, enough so that it had actually ended up scuffing, landed on the Windows turret right here, and actually scuffing and taking a chip out of it. And I need to go check zero. Anytime your optic takes a fall, you need to check zero, but I happened to be on the long range at the time, and I'm like, you know what, let's just go ahead and see if this thing is still hitting where I want to. So I set up on a target, it was a 3/4 IPSC, so 12 inches wide by 20 inches tall, with ball ammunition at 507 yards. The gun was hitting in the exact same spot as the previous group, had not lost zero at all. Now, if you really try to make these things lose zero, could you? Yes. Same thing with an ACOG. If I took and started beating on something with this, I could eventually end up making it lose zero. But you're not trying to be overly or unreasonably abusive to your stuff, but they can take a beating, contrary to what he says in his video. Now, another really huge con that I've come across with the ACOG versus the LPVO, and this is in a lot of ways, and some LPVOs also have this con, and that is the reticles that you are going to run into within these optics. So bullet drop compensators are going to be calibrated for a specific type of ammunition at a specific velocity, at a specific temperature, at a specific altitude, and they try to kind of jack of all trades these reticles when they set them up to work where if you're at the exact altitude where these are set, they're going to work phenomenally well. But as soon as you get it to higher or lower temperatures, as soon as you start getting to a hotter ammunition, or you start to change your ammunition, things are going to start to not line up quite as well. So currently this optic set up to this upper at 70 degrees Fahrenheit with 55 grain M193. It's a 13.7 upper, so it's pretty close. It's the 14.5 version of this optic. This thing lines up almost perfectly. I believe it's like 304, 406, 508, 611, and like 717, I think, are the distances that this thing ends up lining up the BDC. I'll annotate the exact amount here. But one of the things that you'll notice with this, it is something that I have run into on multiple occasions, is even a temperature swing from earlier in the morning when you start shooting to when you get closer to noon, later to afternoon, towards a temperature like it is right now where it's in the 90s, the bullet drop compensator, you really start to lose the ability to get accurate holes, and everything inside of this thing is going to change because your round is moving faster and dropping to a less extent because it's not in the air quite as long versus at the lower temperature. So that's one of the really big cons to the ACOG versus the LPVO. Also, another one is the ability to hold at targets that are in between those amounts. If you look inside of an ACOG, between steady lines, there are a lot of dead space between each of those points. Now at closer distances, 200, 300, 400 yards, it's not something that's going to really matter as much. But as soon as you start pushing this optic out to distance, if you're getting to random distances, or like more random, like 435 or 580 or something like that, you're going to start to have a lot of dead space that you're having to hold in this, and there's a lot of guesstimating that's going to have to go on. Now if you've got a nice big bright silhouette to shoot at, you've got a nice big target, you might get your hits. But as soon as you start to decrease the overall size of those targets, because keep in mind, whenever you're shooting at somebody, they're not going to stand out in the open and just let you. All you might be able to get is kind of similar to how the Marine Corps dog target is set up, where you're getting basically a head and the shoulders. That's a lot less room for error that you have to work with in there, and that dead space is going to be detrimental in taking shots like that at smaller targets. The LPVO, on top of its ability to have better PID at distance versus the ACOG, because you've got a higher magnification, you have a lot less dead space within the reticle, and generally you're going to be getting into, or you should be looking to get into, either a NMOA or a mill-based reticle. You're going to have a lot finer aiming points, more refined aiming points, more aiming points inside of that to actually work off of. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to be able to build an accurate dope chart. You can go online to a Reddit forum and you can figure out kind of the average for a BDC reticle, and you can go get an Applied Ballistics app and plug all that in there with your zero, and you can get a rough enough guesstimation very easily at distance and what it takes to actually connect at those distances, and you will be on within 1 or 2 rounds. And one of the other really big ways that this is going to help you is in the PID aspect of it, is actually being able to spot both your hits and your misses because of the higher magnification with an LPVO versus what you're getting with an ACOG. So those are just two of the really big talking points that he goes into, and it's just, you're going to have a lot more capability with the LPVO versus the ACOG. You're going to have the ability to PID and engage at a distance with a lot more consistency. Now another one of the really big pros of something like an LPVO and a 1 to 8, even a 1 to 6, and even more so a 1 to 10 is the ability to have PID at distance. And that is going to go into multiple different facets when I speak on PID. One being, is that person the combatant? What is it he is holding? What is their capabilities? You're actually using the optic and you're engaging out to distance. Where are my hits going? Where are my misses going? What do I need to correct? Different things like that are going to play a major role when you're talking about trying to engage at any realistic distance. And one of the things that we are constantly running into with the ACOG is the ability to make those connections at distance. A perfect prime example of this is the last big shoot that we had out here, where we did a general purpose rifle style shoot that only went out to about 552 yards for the furthest target. The guys running the ACOGs, there was 2 guys out here with ACOGs, and it's the previous GPR video that I have, and there were several guys out here with LPVOs. The guys running the LPVOs, without question, without fail, completely outshot the guys running the ACOGs. And one really good example of this is whenever we were doing the 450 and 552 yard target, the gentleman that was running, it was a TA-01, I believe, with a piggybacked Hollison dot. He wasn't even able to differentiate the differences in the shapes that we had painted on the targets to be able to PID, hey, this is what target that you're shooting at. Reason being is there was a cloud that had moved in, and then the cloud was a thin cloud, and it was overshadowing the target itself. So he had light behind the target as well as sunlight in front of the target. And I kind of want you to think of this as if you are standing outside on a bright sunny day and you are trying to look into a dark room. Because of the way that photonic barriers work with that, with your eyes not adjusting to it, is you're not able to actually differentiate definition at distance. And the lower power optics he was having a really difficult time with PID on those particular targets. And he actually ended up timing out because he couldn't even figure out which target he was shooting at. He thought he was shooting at the correct one, and because I was telling him, hey, it's the target furthest to the whatever side, or it's the 3rd target out from this one, and he completely just missed the one that he was supposed to be aiming at. And when the shadow ended up moving off, then he saw it, he corrected and was getting hits, but it was a little too late because he had run out of time for that particular stage. Now, close range LPVOs, you have got the ability to roll that bad boy down all the way to 1x, and while it does take a little bit of practice to get used to running one of these versus, say, something like a red dot, It takes a lot less practice and a lot less training for an individual to be able to accurately and effectively employ one of these at 1 power versus what it's going to be with the ACOG. The ACOG, the Marine Corps, they taught us the bending aiming concept. And another really huge thing is some people aren't, because of the way their brains work, they're not able to actually use the bending aiming concept. I'm a prime example of this. My eyes focus independently of each other, so I can actually focus on multiple different things at distance with my eyes. A lot of people's brains are actually going to work differently like that. So if I pull up and try to do a bending aiming concept, my eye doesn't superimpose the reticle on the opposite side, or however it is they explain how that works. So that's not something that's reliable that you're going to want to actually work into, and it's not something that without a lot of training that an individual can just pick up on and do. So even at closer distances, you're going to find that the LPVO is going to outperform an ACOG in pretty much every way. Now you say, oh, well, I'll just throw a red dot on top of my ACOG and be able to run it like that. Well, you can do the exact same thing with the LPVO as well, but now instead of just having to either have a 1X or have a 4X, I've got 2 different points for 1X, and then also a third point where I've got the 8X as well. So now I've got multiple different sighting systems, aiming points, multiple different options that I can use. Also, running one of these, unless you get the TAO where it pushes that dot forward, if you get the older ones with the tritium style reticles, then you're going to be running into the ability to passive aim with it. The dot is going to be too close to your face in order to be able to actually pick the gun up and look through it with nods and be able to use the dot like that. Whereas with an LPVO pushing this thing forward, you're able to actually accurately passive aim through that optic and be able to use it effectively with night vision as well. You can do it with an ACOG, but it's going to be much more difficult. And that's just another of many different ways that you're going to run into problems with one of these versus one of these. Moving on forward to his next point of what he went into in the video of an option that you can use, and that was running a magnifier behind a red dot. Now, I went into a little bit of detail in my prior video as to why I don't do that. I don't primary one of these or use this as my primary source of aiming, and that I tailor a gun based on a use case at distance. And the match that we went to on Sunday is a prime example of this. Florida, it rains a shit ton, and Sunday was no exception for that. Rained pretty much the entire day, and there were a whole bunch of guys at that match that were running a red dot magnifier type setup, and something that I've also run into in the past, and that's why I completely stopped using this setup at the matches that I go to, and I run this and have had great success with it. And that's because once you start introducing multiple panes of glass that have the ability to collect and gather water, you are going to greatly diminish your ability to actually be able to see at distance. And yes, the regular standard dot is always going to be faster than an LPVO, but I can run the top mounted dot on this every bit as fast as I can run this. It's just that generally speaking, I'm going to set a system up like this to work and be a certain way based off the use case. Again, this being a 200 yards and in, close in and night vision gun, it's more so what it's oriented for. And then the 14.5 with the LPVO being kind of my general purpose or do it all rifle. So you guys, y'all run what you want. You can run whatever it is you want. If you feel like you have to run an ACOG because you want that maximum durability that you're getting out of one, go ahead and do it. They are a little bit lighter, but it's, in the grand scheme of things, it's actually not that much. You can't have your cake and eat it too. There's going to be gives and takes to everything. And if you're going to be running more capability, a lot of times you're going to pay for that penalty in weight, and that is where the LPVO comes into play. So if you guys do have any questions, drop them down in the comments section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I appreciate y'all watching. All right, take 2. So I forgot to hit the record button, and I actually had a really good run, several really good runs with this. I fired a spider on there. Fired probably 15 or so rounds. Did several, whatever 3 bill drills worth is, with the 14.5 here, so the can's already nice and hot. I had 2 that had went out, and it was on the very first one. My times were hovering around the between 1.5 and 2 second mark for the 7-yard bill drill. All right, so go ahead and tap that. So we're gonna run it again through the LPVO. All right, 169 for the time. So you can see that 169 down. Again, it's just kind of show the speed overall of the LPVO and how at close distance you can very easily get her done. All right, so next we're gonna go to the 11.5, the aim point. I think a sub 2 second bill drill is plenty respectable. Try I'm in frame. Hopefully I'm in frame. All right, we're gonna run this again with the dot. .161 on the time on that. So I train with both LPVOs and dots pretty often. I got a 160 on that guy, and as you can see, my rounds are literally landing in roughly the same spot. All of them are in. What I forgot to record, I have two that are off here, so you can see that. I had run several, and I was going to run several on both, but I don't want to burn any more ammunition than I absolutely have to on doing this particular example, because bill drills, in my opinion, are a waste of ammo, unless you're doing a very niche thing of trying to just kind of get cadence down, which case I normally would do a cadence anyways, but I wanted to run a bill drill because it's a standard that a lot of people practice. So that's kind of my reasoning for that there. But as you can see, example there, plenty fast enough with both of these, running it through the LPVO on 1 power, as well as the aim point, which is just a standard red dot. So that said, I could not go that fast with an ACOG. I've trained a lot with ACOGs. You're just not going to be as fast with an ACOG. There's going to be a slight delay there. You could train and get pretty quick with one, or you can just run the top dot. But as a whole, an LPVO is going to be as fast as a dot, especially if you just even give a little bit of an inkling of training to it. They're going to be just as fast. So you can run your own bill drills if you want. Kind of do this test yourself. It's simple: 7 yards, IPSC, A-zone, bill drill, all 6 rounds in it, as fast and accurately as you can. Don't run your accuracy, but you see there, very easily, very simply done.